Yeah, so I'm gonna do my baby and mother and baby vlog today. I'll share you about my pregnancy. I've been I became pregnant in 2013, and I was a little bit anxious because I just got made redundant, and I was looking for work at the time. So it was but then there never is a good timing sometimes. And that's the subject that I want to hit on first, really, is that when it comes to expecting a child, you can prepare, but you can't really plan. I remember planning, how me and Elf were going to feed our child, we were going to take it in turns, and that actually, the planning that I put together since my son was born went straight out the window. My son was born at 31 weeks, premature. I didn't drink or smoke during my pregnancy, but it got a bit complicated towards that time because I found out that I had gestational diabetes, and I only found out when my waters broke one Saturday evening. My son was born then on a Monday because they got concerned with his heart rate. It kept dropping and my heart rate kept rising, and my breathing was apparently going really fast, and so they just got concerned. So rather than risk any further complications if I just go into proper labour, they decided to deliver my baby on the Monday morning, to be rather safe than sorry. It was very traumatic at the time, but now I can look back and they did make the right decision because Henry was my son was stuck around the umbilical cord, which could have led to further complications should I have had a natural birth. So the only sad thing was at the time I didn't get to hold my son until later on in the day, but by reading other people's stories that some mums didn't get to hold their babies till a week after they'd been born. So really and truly, my story, even though at the time was traumatic, wasn't far was far less traumatic than what other parents have gone through. But it was still a scary time. During my pregnancy, what I would have changed was I would have been a lot more relaxed. I think my worry and anxiety got the better of me at sometimes during my pregnancy, and I should have just allowed it to happen. What I did find helpful was learning about each stage as I went through my pregnancy, and I at one point was relaxed and was fine. I wish that I could have actually have been able to see my baby on the screen all the time, just to see really what was really going on, because it's only when you sort of because I watched things on YouTube about the different stages, what they'll be doing, when they'll be hearing me and my husband's voice, when my baby will be kicking for the first time, you feel flutters in the stomach, and being able to see what actually was going on. I became really interested into how my baby was developing, and that helped me to relax. And I wish I'd focused that on more rather than worrying about not having our baby's room ready, not having nappies ready, because really the things that you need to I would have prepared myself for were things like premature birth, reading about everything in terms of what could happen at this stage, about gestational diabetes, and how to deal with that, because there are hurdles. But what I would say is release the pressure. You can't really plan. You don't really know what's going to happen until your baby arrives, and as you go through the pregnancy. And I found that I've learned as I've gone, as I've gone through a pregnancy, and then my son being arriving and delivered, by bringing our son home for the first time. and I'm still learning. You never stop learning as a parent, and they're learning as well. So it's all new. It's new to everybody, not just not just for yourself, but for your baby as well. They're learning to grow. So even though it's very easy to beat yourself up over things, never do that, because you're just adding the pressure onto yourself, and you're not allowing yourself to enjoy being a parent sometimes. I found that at the beginning when my son was born, because the nurses, no, I know they were just doing their job, or midwives were just doing their job, but I felt they put too much pressure on me when it came to producing milk, because I hadn't really allowed myself to recover. And then for the week after my son was born, because he was born premature, I was transferred to St Helier, and then when he was delivered, and after a week, he was then transferred to the special care unit in Epsom. I then came down with a viral infection, and I then couldn't see my son for a week, and I remember being absolutely devastated and crying my heart out, being told that I can't go and see my son, even though then he was just around the corner, and it was so hard. But then what I focused my attention to was expressing milk. But I hadn't really allowed myself to rest, and I remember feeling so exhausted and drained, and I was traumatised, because I'm somebody who always looks beyond today. I always look to the future and plan things, and when that happened, I couldn't see, I couldn't allow myself to think ahead of time. I just had to take each day as it came, because when my son was born early, and in the special care unit in the incubator, your worry is, making sure he gets through each day, and every day that he lived from that point was a bonus up to when we could bring him home. I always was sort of like on edge, waiting for that phone call from the special care unit, calling and telling us to come to the hospital in case something really bad did happen. But I've got to say that the midwives and the staff in the special care unit were terrific. They really helped and supported us, and helped give us reassurance, and any questions that we had, they were happy to ask. And we got given this book, which was really helpful. And one of the charities I support is Tommy's, because they are a charity that specialises in stillborn and premature births. And I've got to say, this book was very helpful, and I'm gonna make sure that I raise money for this charity on a regular basis, because I think they're phenomenal. Because this book was so helpful, because your emotions are quadrupled, because you've got hormones that are somersaulting, but you've also got other emotions through the trauma of your baby being born so early, because you don't know what's going to happen the next day. And this book really helped us, what to expect when we go into special care unit, about the different types of equipment. And actually our son, being on a CPAP when he was born, was the less minor type of breathing mask to have, because that means that he was already breathing by himself. He had no difficulty breathing as such, but it just helped give him extra oxygen. And then within 2 days he was off of that, and he just had the wires attached to him that were measuring his heart rate and pulse and his breathing and that sort of thing. But I remember watching the monitor at one point like a hawk, and I remember the nurse saying, stop worrying about the monitor. Look at your baby. Look at your baby, because you'll know by looking at your baby if your baby's in distress or not. And they said, if we are not concerned, you don't need to be concerned. If we rushed over, that's when you need to be concerned. But because we're not, because at one point it came loose off of one of the attachments to my son that was measuring his heart rate and that breathing. became loose. So suddenly it kept dropping on the screen, and I was getting really paranoid. But then the midwife in there said, or what they call a neonatal um, nurses or specialists, said, don't worry, stop looking at the monitor. Look at your baby. Is he normal colour? Yes. Does he look like he's had difficulty breathing? He was fidgeting, a lot of the time. So, so they were brilliant in terms of keeping you calm, and then what they do is that they allow you to do lots of the care for your baby, so you get to know your child. And that's the other thing that I've learned, is that your baby makes decisions from the moment they're born. For example, our son didn't like to be, like when he was in the incubator, didn't like to be stroked. It really irritated him. Really irritated him. But when you put your hand on him, so on his head, and in his bottom, he felt comfort from that. And also, he did respond to my voice, because obviously they recognise your voice from being in your tummy. So my son, we already learnt what our son liked and what he didn't like from that moment on. And sort of like even now, my son isn't properly talking, he's doing baby talk, but what he does do is that he signs to me. So when he's eating, he'll say, like, when my mouth is still full, don't give me any more food. And then he'll be like, and then he'll sort of grunt and say, like, I can have more now. You can feed me more now. And also, like when he's tired, he'll start to want to be held and sort of lay down a lot. So, and that indicates to us that he's tired and yawning. So, you pick that your child will let you know from sort of even early age, or what he likes and what he don't like. And the worst thing to be is on edge, because flustered and panicking, because they pick up on it. Because I remember first changing my baby's bottom, I think, oh God, I was so worried about him being cold and losing temperature that I wasn't focusing properly. I was panicking with the nappy changes. So, and I was getting distressed, he was getting distressed, while my husband was getting wound up. So what I would say is just take each moment as it comes, and take your time, and just enjoy the experience. Even if you put something is born early, that's why I wrote my book, and this is not to publicise this in any way, but that's why I wrote my book, because the parenting adventures, because it helped me come to terms with it all and look back and actually be able to laugh at some of the things, like because when your baby first does a poo, for example, it's like a black tar. And I remember my friend, she had a baby before me, it's telling me this. I didn't know that. I remember saying, I didn't know that what colour their poo would be. And I remember her telling me that, it's like black, like to warn you, it's like black tar. And I remember when we were trying to change our son's nappy, and I realised every parent did the same thing, where we end up putting on all white at first. That little paper thing that should be so simple, sort of becomes a hard task at first. And especially because it only had wires wrapped around, and we were so worried about putting something out, whatever. And during changing nappy, our son, peed 3 times and pooed 3 times on my husband's head, which was, at the time, we didn't see the funny side, but now I can laugh back at that, because it was, we're all fingers and thumbs, because you're so worried about breaking your little one, and making sure that the nappy goes on properly, and making sure that they don't, because at first, don't be surprised if baby screams when you first change your nappy, because they don't like it at first. But the worst thing to do is and calm them down whilst your spouse is changing your baby's nappy, but they don't like that at first. But then that's changed, you know, as would be changed at one point, because I did, this is what I recommend to all mums, is to do baby massage. I found that so helpful. And there are Sure Start centres in the UK now. I don't know what they are in other countries or places, but I didn't have to pay because I got referred by my health visitor, and I would recommend that as well, to get referred. And then it was free for me to do, and it was baby massage class. And basically, you're just massaging your baby, and it really helps you to bond and enjoy your baby. And in the end, my son really enjoyed that. He enjoyed nappy change. It became, and that's the thing. Don't make it into is making things into fun rather than into a chore. So sort of talking to your baby and singing songs and giving your baby a massage before you change the nappy can help keep your baby calm, and sort of talking and also baby exercises, and it's really fun thing to do, and I will demonstrate that, how to do that, baby exercises. And this massaging is really great fun. That, I wouldn't mind sort of taking a class and teaching that myself, actually, baby massage, because it is really good fun thing to do, and you also get to meet other mums and chatting with other mums, and that's why me and mum doing this vlog as well, because I found that talking to other mums, that helped me learn about getting my baby into a routine, because we struggled with getting a good routine at first. It took about up to almost 5 months to actually get into a really good routine that stuck, because we did the whole thing where my son would go, like I would go to sleep, and then me and my husband would swap over. But then my husband has got a tendency of sleeping over, and then wouldn't wake up, so then I'd end up being knackered, and then we did the thing where I would go to bed early, and then my husband would stay up, but then my husband became quite ill for doing that, being so tired and having to still go to work. So what we ended up doing, and I know like you do end up losing your evening for a while, was that we went to bed early as well. So we went to bed the same time as our son did. But that was good because it got us into a routine, and it gave us a chance to catch up on the sleep, because you will be sleep deprived, and it is a lot difficult to sleep when your baby sleeps during the day because you want to get things done. But if you find that difficult, then I would suggest, I know it gives up your evening, but a good way of catching up with sleep is when your baby goes to sleep in the evening, is for you to go to sleep as well, because then you'll find that you'll catch up on your sleep then. But then my son's routine at night did go a bit topsy-turvy as he was teething, because you'll find that as they're teething, their sleep will be disrupted a little bit, or quite a bit. But every baby is different, every experience is different, but you'll find that there will be similarities, and some as you go through with other mums, and that's why it's good to share it with speak to other mums, and that's why I did the baby massage class, because of that as well. And that's how I got through that routine, from speaking to another mum, sort of following a pattern and routine. So you feed your baby, you give your baby a bath, you get your baby dressed, and then you play some music. And then they say the baby whisper about not playing music, but I found that it helps, and I don't think that's a bad thing really, to play music or lullabies before they go to bed. What you want to do is follow a pattern, and they follow. What we decided to do was not do soothers, because I didn't want Henry. With soothers, we strayed away from that. I think it's people's choice if you want to do soothers or not. Same as breastfeeding. I found breastfeeding very difficult, and if one thing I would do if I do decide to have another baby is definitely go to a breastfeeding clinic, because I think that would have really helped me. And so when it comes to if you're expecting a child, prepare for the things like breast milk. So go to breastfeeding clinic, read up about stories about premature births. Not saying that it happens to everybody, but just to make you aware of it, because I did come across an article a week before it happened when my water broke, and I remember thinking I sort of took it for granted. Oh no, I don't need to read that, and I wish I had, because it's not so much of it's not for scaremongering or anything like that. It's more so you're prepared and so if something happens. Because I didn't realise that your waters could break so early, and I wish that I had known about that beforehand. So it's them kind of things that you need to really be prepared for. Not so much about worrying about getting enough nappies or clothes and that. You can worry about that later on, but preparing yourself in terms of what could happen. If you do get a certain discharge when you go for a week, for example, if you do feel back pain, if you do I had gestational diabetes, and there were some things that now when I look back hinted that I had that, in terms of feeling like peeing a lot. I mean, you do pee a lot anyway when you're pregnant, so it's hard to tell, but there were times when I thought, oh, that's not right, and I really wish that I had looked further into that and spoke to when I had my antenatal appointments, that I had made the midwife aware, because that's what they're there for. They're there to help you and give advice, and for example, one thing, because when my gums kept bleeding and I kept getting nosebleeds, and reading up about it on watching YouTube videos, and also reading I had this pregnancy Bible. If I find the book, I'll put it at the bottom, and I'll even put it on the screen of the books I've read, and I'll do a bit at the end of the different books I've read as well. The Baby Whisper, and there's a Baby Bible. I also found that the Baby Centre, NHS, Net Mums had really great information on there about different things that happen in the stage of pregnancy, and because I did get nosebleeds and gums bleeding, and what really annoyed me now was that watching a programme that we have in the UK called This Morning, where it talks about if you have hay fever during your pregnancy, which I did have quite a bit of, about using those. There's certain nasal sprays you can use and some that you can't use, and they told me that I couldn't. My midwife told me I couldn't, and I really found that I could, which was really, I think that, there's obviously a mixed communication there, which is not helpful, and so there's lots of things that you kind of have to, I found that I had to find out for myself, and it was talking to my midwife that I said, my gums bleeding, my nose bleeding, she said, that's normal, that's fine. But nasal sprays and that, they didn't say you couldn't, they kept telling me I couldn't use that, and when I went to Boots, they told me I could, and I mixed information, but then watching the doctor they have on this programme This Morning that we have in the UK, so that you can use nasal sprays, certain ones you can't, certain ones you can. And I really wish that I'd looked into that more and took more advice on that, because I was really struggling in terms of breathing sometimes, and getting phlegmed up and locked up. So those sort of things I wish I would have concentrated more on, rather than worrying about getting my baby when ready, because when my son was born premature, and so we didn't really worry about that at all, and thankfully, thanks to my brother and my sister-in-law, they took care of that, which I was so grateful for. And in terms of baby clothes, we had no premature clothes at all, if I'd have read up a premature birth, I would have probably got one or two things, ready, just in case. And I would say, don't worry too much about that, but just be aware of that, and get a few tiny baby things. Don't go OTT, because once your baby is born, they do grow at such an extent that half the clothes that you given to you or buy as newborn. You probably won't get through it if you buy so much. But if you like I would advise, if you've got loads of family and friends that want to buy you things and you're gonna have a baby shower, is not have everybody buy you newborn clothes and items, but buy some clothes of the next stages, like because before you know it, they'll be in 2 to 3 months clothes and 3 to 6 months clothes. So it's always good to have some clothes of that stage, rather than all newborn clothes and toys and stuff like that, because they do develop so quickly. And the other thing I would say is stock up on baby wipes and muslins. And one thing I would say is get yourself a notebook. This is not the actual one that I use, but I'm using my other one downstairs. This is a picture of my son when he was a week old, and when he was in his cot, because he came out of the incubator quite quickly after about 4 days, and so he became big. He was so strong from the moment he was born. He thrived, thankfully. And what I did, I wrote down the feeds, and I even write it down now, sort of that if there are any foods that I feel doesn't agree with Henry, like acidic foods, like fruits, I'll write it down to keep note of. If there's any, and even foods that he does like, just jot it down so you can write about it and you look at, and look back at it, and also then, and still keep trying with him certain foods, if you find that he doesn't like something at first, like Henry didn't like things with chicken or green veg, now he likes that, so their taste buds and that will change when you start weaning. So don't try and learn, but don't put too much pressure or feel bad if they, for example, you can't provide that much breast milk, because I had a really hard time with that, and there is formula milk. I do believe that it's people's choice whether they decide to breastfeed or not. If I could do it again, I hope that, my next baby does take to breast milk, because it is not, in terms of that, it's natural, it's not more convenient. Because I found with formula, we had to, especially because you had to have infant Gaviscon put in his milk, because what I did, I expressed, and he had my milk as well as formula milk. And which was, in one aspect, quite good, because if my mum babysat Henry, or my husband told Henry whilst I went out, then he could feed Henry, and he wasn't reliant. But I do think that whether breast is best, I think it's people's choice. But I do believe that giving him my breast milk, I did cater for my son the best I could. He did get the nutrients that I could give him through expressing if he couldn't take it directly. And what I would advise when expressing milk is don't go buying a hand pump and the manual one, because it is hard work and you feel like you're defeated. You feel defeatist even before you begun. So I would definitely recommend, if you're gonna express it and milk, is to get an electric one. Forget the manual hand pump. It's added unnecessary inconvenience. So I would definitely recommend get an electric breast pump. Then the ones I used was a Tommy Tippy breast pump, but that is your choice. I mean, even the bottles that we originally buy, my son didn't use in the end because he didn't take to the teat. So we had to change them for which was recommended by the hospital, was Advent bottles. And we instead of using the newborn teat, we were recommended to either use the very flow teat or the size 2. So your baby will decide what they like and what they don't like, and so that's what I mean about you prepare for when your baby is born, but you can't really plan. So prepare as much as you can, but don't worry about planning so much, because when your baby arrives, the planning happens when your baby arrives. So I'm going to go now and end this vlog, but I will come out and I'll show you the folder that I put together for my son. and I'll go through other things. I'll go through baby exercising. But until then, I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.